Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. Well, it appears that Ayatollah Khamenei is still breathing, at least for now. The so-called supreme leader of the Iranian regime reared his head today for the first time in a week. And folks, get this. Even though 30 at least of his top military generals, top regime officials were eliminated by Israel, even though no less than 12 of his nuclear scientists were also eliminated by Israel, even though half of his ballistic missile stockpile and launchers were destroyed, you guessed it, by Israel. And even though Israel, with a very big assist from the United States, destroyed his nuclear program, more on that in a minute, despite all that, and despite the fact that he's been hiding in a bunker for 2 weeks, Ayatollah Khamenei, get this, declared victory. So your eyes deceive you, ladies and gentlemen. Everything I just described, the Iranian regime essentially teetering on the brink of collapse, much of its leadership wiped out, its military leadership at least, its key nuclear scientists, its military capabilities, ballistic missiles, nuclear program, etc. Not to mention its ring of fire, its axis, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, the Shia militias in Iraq, Assad's gone in Syria, essentially becoming a smoldering, smoking heap of ruins along with his nuclear sites. Despite all that, Iran won. Didn't you know? You have it all wrong. Well, here's what Ayatollah Khamenei says, according to him, and he would never lie, right? Here we go. Ayatollah Khamenei, he reared his head today. He's still in a bunker, I suppose, someplace. But here we go from the Times of Israel. You got to laugh because the man, you remember Baghdad Bob during the Iraq War 2003, the second Iraq War, I guess I should say. Baghdad Bob, Saddam Hussein's top spokesman, who said, you know, the U.S. is on the run, the enemy is about to be defeated, the mother of all battles, yada, yada, yada. And we all know how that went for Saddam Hussein's regime. Well, Khamenei, and it's interesting, if say Hamas or Hezbollah or the Iranian regime, if they survive intact, I mean, again, teetering on the brink of collapse, I mean, by the skin of their teeth hanging on the power, if they just survive, they declare victory. Pretty low bar for them, but here we go. Here's the headline from the Times of Israel. Threatening to, quote, slap the U.S. again, Iran's Khamenei claims Trump exaggerated the strikes. Those 6 massive craters at Fordo, again, your eyes deceive you. Speaking for the first time after a week of silence, the supreme leader says America only intervened because it feared Iran would destroy Israel. He asserted that the attacks on the nuclear sites were insignificant. Forget what even the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Association, an arm of the UN, says. No, they were just insignificant. Okay, I'll stop opining, but I just, the absurdity of it. Khamenei made his first appearance, and he hailed his country's victory in the 12-day air war launched by Israel, which he claimed Israel had almost collapsed because of Iran's strikes. Now, it's a televised speech and a statement. It was carried by Iranian state media. Came 2 days after the ceasefire went into effect, of course. But just a quick note, he's saying Israel was about to be destroyed. Folks, listen. I think 500 ballistic missiles got through, if that. Not even. I think 300. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Apologies. A few hundred Iranian ballistic missiles were launched. Not that many got through. I'm sorry. A few dozen maybe got through, if that. The rest were all intercepted. Now, there was some heavy damage done in Tel Aviv and Haifa to specific civilian buildings because he's pure evil, is Khamenei and his hordes and his minions. The radical jihadists, they're evil and they intentionally target civilians. So yes, there were some civilian sites at Beersheba, of course, right before the ceasefire went into effect, 4 people murdered by an Iranian ballistic missile. So there were some hits. Some of those ballistic missiles connected, for sure, as we knew they would, sadly. But not that many got through. And yes, there was destruction on a very limited scale where they did strike. And 29 Israelis were killed, which is horrible, horrible. But let's put it in perspective. There were doomsday scenarios that Iran was going to launch thousands of missiles and thousands of Israelis would be killed. Not only that, Hezbollah would be launching thousands. Hamas would be launching thousands. The Houthis, the militias in Iraq. Assad, who knew what he would do? That was a few months ago. Those were the estimates. So we went from that all the way down to this. A few hundred missiles were launched by Iran, and every missile's bad. 29 people were killed. Horrific, tragic. May their memories be a blessing. Every death is bad. But from what was estimated to how it panned out, actually, I think Israel will take this, without a doubt. And by the way, how the mighty have fallen, I keep saying, that Iranian ring of fire. The Iranian axis was on the march, right? And yet on October 7th, it signed its own death warrant. Isn't it interesting? That was the zenith of their jihad against Israel. October 7th, their crowning achievement, their moment of glory. And it all unraveled like that, starting the very next day as Israel started to hit back. But isn't it interesting? We say, oh, how the mighty have fallen. Hamas, Hezbollah. We say at the end of this live stream, never hold your peace. Oh, they held their peace. Hamas, Hezbollah, the militias in Iraq, and the Houthis, in large part, over the last 2 weeks, they weren't heard from. I mean, at all. To say that Hezbollah, if you would have told me a year ago that, hey, Israel is going to strike Iran's nuclear facilities and Hezbollah won't make a peep. Hezbollah is going to sit by and watch as Israel absolutely shellacks Iran, not only its nuke facilities, but Iran itself, and gains complete air superiority over Tehran, the Iranian capital, destroys Iran's air defenses, and Hezbollah is not going to do anything. Nor is Hamas. Well, Hamas a year ago was already kind of down for the count, but Hezbollah, nothing. I would have said, you're out of your mind. The whole reason that Iran over the past few decades has built Hezbollah up into this supposed 800-pound gorilla, the elephant in the room, was for this moment. When Israel decides, and we knew it was coming, right, eventually, when Israel decides to strike Iran's nuclear weapons facilities, Hezbollah will be unleashed. Hezbollah was the ultimate deterrent. It would make Israel think twice, number one, about striking at all, and fearing Hezbollah's response. Look, 150,000 rockets and missiles pointed at every inch of Israel, a nation the size of the state of New Jersey. So it would make Israel think twice about striking in the first place. And secondly, okay, if Israel does strike, it would have hell to pay afterwards as Hezbollah responded. And look at where we are now. Look at the past 12 days. Actually, on the first day of this operation, Hezbollah released a statement saying, hey, we're not getting involved. How the mighty have fallen, or the so-called mighty. You know, I think the West has had past tense now, had built up the Iranian axis. Again, this is 800-pound gorilla, and oh my gosh, don't mess with Iran. Really? It's a tin pot dictatorship that 80% of its population hates. The Iranian people, of course, are the main victims of this wicked regime. Look, other than their ballistic missile stockpiles, they did have 3,000. I think that's whittled down to about 1,000 now, reportedly. Other than having, which is nothing to sneeze at, the largest ballistic missile stockpile in the entire Middle East, there ain't much. And what there was, all they did was operate through proxy. And they said, we didn't do it. Their proxies would strike, and they'd say, hey, we didn't do it. It was a pretty good gig that they had going there for years. And now they're finally facing consequences and being held accountable. So Khamenei said, the United States has gained nothing from this war. And they did nothing significant to Iran's nuclear facilities. The Islamic Republic won, he said, and in retaliation dealt a severe slap to the face of America. He was referring to Iran's missile launch targeting a military base in Qatar that was housing U.S. troops. A missile launch, I think it was 6 missiles, maybe 10, between 6 and 10 reportedly. They were all intercepted. And Iran apparently through back channels coordinated this, and we talked about this on the live stream earlier this week, coordinated this retaliatory strike against the U.S. base in Qatar with the Qataris. And I think even the U.S. might have had a heads up. Actually, President Trump said they did. Okay, we got to fire a few missiles, Iran said, just to save face. You just humiliated us in front of the eyes of the world. You destroyed 3 of our main nuclear sites. And now we need to just do something to make it look like we retaliated. This is pathetic. Khamenei, not only is he demonic, I mean, pure evil. He's pathetic. This is pathetic. The entire world watched and knows what happened, including the Muslim world. Hey, I mentioned a live stream earlier this week. And if you miss any of them, folks, be sure to subscribe. Click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. We're coming to you most days during the week. And hey, during the 12-day war, I think we came to you all 12 days in a row, weekends and all. You don't want to miss any of our breaking news updates. So be sure to subscribe, click the notification bell. They'll give you an alert. Hey, Stakelbeck's on. So please do that. And we've got now almost 1.1 million subscribers for such a time as this, a gathering of watchmen and women on the wall here for breaking news, current events, mainly from the Middle East and Israel, but we hit the whole geopolitical realm and we do it from an unapologetically biblical perspective. Hey, by the way, I mentioned Israel, the home front being bombarded. 29 at last count Israelis killed by Iranian ballistic missile barrages. Every single time we saw one of those barrages unfold, Magen David Adom first responders were there. They are our partner for today's live stream. They've been our partner for a good while, and there's a reason for that. Magen David Adom is Israel's emergency services system. They are Israel's first responders. They respond to every terror attack, every missile attack. Magen David Adom ambulances are there. They're the first ones on the ground. Even if someone has a heart attack, a car accident, God forbid, Magen David Adom is there. I'm in Israel all the time. Their ambulances are everywhere. They've been working overtime, needless to say, since October 7th, and as Israel fights a war on 7 fronts, but in particular, these ballistic missile onslaughts. Magen David Adom, look, this is a volunteer force. 90% volunteers, EMTs, first responders, paramedics. Folks, it's SaveLivesIsrael.com. SaveLivesIsrael.com to support. Again, they don't get salaries. They're volunteers. You can support this incredible volunteer force. They collect, they process, they distribute Israel's blood supply for civilians and the IDF. They've lost over 30 of their volunteers since October 7th in the line of duty, over 17 ambulances, putting their lives on the line and doing God's work for nothing other than it's the right thing to do. So you can help support their work. You want to fulfill that biblical mandate to bless Israel laid out in Genesis 12:3? SaveLivesIsrael.com. Right now, they need ambulances, bandages, medical supplies. It's wartime. They need your help. You can bless Israel in its time of greatest need. Can't think of a better way to do it than Israel's emergency services system. Again, David Adom. That's SaveLivesIsrael.com. Check them out. You won't be sorry. Great, great, great group of people. A not so great group of people is running Iran right now still. And I mentioned Ayatollah Khamenei is still alive. Here's the rest of what he said as he reared his head today. By the way, 86 years old. There's long been reports that he's in bad health. There were reports, rumors of stomach cancer over the years. He's on his last legs. He apparently, from the bunker, selected his 3 top choices for succession who would succeed him as supreme leader. One of them was one of his sons, who I believe is in his mid-50s, early 50s. But Khamenei, listen, folks, may not be long for this world. And by the way, Israel's defense minister, Israel, yes, his name is Israel Katz, said today that Israel tried to assassinate him. They planned to assassinate Khamenei over the past 2 weeks during that 12-day war. And he said the opportunity just did not present itself. I guess he moved around, who knows? But here's a big question now, before we read more of his threats and his declaration of victory in fantasy land. But here's something to keep in mind. What happens now? Okay, and we've been talking about, since the ceasefire went into effect, what's next? What's Iran's next move? And I think the main question there is the leadership structure. Khamenei, again, 86, bad health, I mean, obviously, he made disastrous decisions, as did his closest advisors. Does he survive this? What do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts. We have a very educated audience here. As you look out the landscape in Iran, does Khamenei survive this? Would love to get your thoughts. I see a few possibilities. I mean, he could die. He's 86 and in bad health and under a bit of stress as he hides out in the bunker. Good luck, Ayatollah, or not. But another possibility is other heart. Maybe I think he's in it till the death. I don't think he'll just get succeeded and pushed out of the way. Maybe he would. But that brings me to another option. The IRGC, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. They are the vanguard of that regime. They answer directly to Khamenei. Could you have hardliners from the IRGC take control? You could. True believers in the revolution. You could. That's another option. And yet another option is, and the option that's preferable, the Iranian people rise up. Now, like I said, 80% of the Iranian people oppose this regime. They've risen up many times since 1999, actually. And they've been violently put down each time. But the regime was never this weak as it is right now. So let's keep an eye on that in the days and weeks to come. Look, it was tough for people to get out in the streets over the past 2 weeks because bombs were dropping. It was the middle of a war. But now the dust is settling. And perhaps the Iranian people will see just how weak the regime is and say, you know what? This is our moment. Let's do it. That's what I'm praying for. And something to encourage you, the Iranian church, yeah, there's a church in Iran. It's underground. It's not legal, but it's the world's fastest growing. The evangelical born-again church in Iran is not accepted in Iran. They have an official state church that they allow to operate under massive scrutiny. But Christianity writ large is banned. You're locked up, you're tortured, you're killed, imprisoned. And yet the gospel is spreading in Iran, mostly underground, by leaps and bounds. You can't stop the gospel. North Korea can't do it. Communist China can't. Iran can't. You can't stop the gospel. ISIS can't. So Iran, which is a Bible land, is home to the world's fastest growing church. Imagine that, despite relentless persecution. And I keep reminding you all, every live stream, God's not done with Iran. It's a Bible land. Modern day Iran, that was ancient Persia. Esther, Mordecai, Cyrus, Darius from your Bible, that unfolded in Iran. So be encouraged with what God's going to do. There's a lot of probably nasty things that are going to happen first. I hate to say it, but when it shakes out, I think God's going to bless that land, because in prior centuries and decades, Iran was a blessing to Israel. Ancient Persia, look, Cyrus allowed the Jews to return to Jerusalem from the Babylonian captivity and rebuild the temple. The Persians saved the Jewish people in the 7th century as well, right before the Islamic conquest. And then the Shah of Iran, prior to 1979, had great relations with Israel and the United States for that matter. So let's see what God does with Iran. Great civilization, ancient Persia, smart people, well-educated. Let's see what God does once they're finally freed from the yoke of this wicked, wicked regime. Hey, all the gossip, all the noise today, of course, is how successful really were the strikes against Iran's nuclear facilities. President Trump, Pete Hegseth, Defense Secretary, said today, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, they're saying, look, it was a devastating, resounding success. Now, you had this intelligence leak from apparently a low-level anti-Trump staffer that was leaked out there saying, oh, we didn't set it back just a few months. This is the tip. And CNN breaks it. The mainstream media, just really a sick bunch. America just attained a major victory for our security, not just for Israel. We're the great Satan in Iran's ideology. They were working on intercontinental ballistic missiles that could reach here with a nuclear warhead. So President Trump just made an historic decision, made America safer, incredible military success. Come on, that operation was insane. 7 B-2 bombers fly from Missouri to Iran nonstop and fly back after they drop the bombs. They just refueled in midair. It's incredible. Operation Midnight Hammer. But right away, the mainstream media and the left, the Democrats, they're literally rooting against it. It's so sick. The left is just a sick bunch. and they're rooting against victory over the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism. And now they're trying to downplay it and say, oh, Trump didn't accomplish anything. It's just madness. But the Trump administration says, look, I mean, folks, honestly, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to see, and Israeli intelligence is saying, yeah, it's devastated. The IAEA, the UN's atomic watchdog, said, yeah, it's devastated, their nuclear program. Even Iran's foreign minister said we sustained massive damage. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to look at those 6 massive craters at the Fordo underground site that was bombed Saturday night by the U.S. using 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to say there ain't much left. And Natanz and Isfahan, which the U.S. finished the job on, Israel had already mostly devastated those 2 sites prior to last Saturday night. But the mainstream media is an interesting bunch. And now the question is, okay, the enriched uranium. Iran may have moved. Long story short, not to get too weeds technically, but you need to enrich uranium to build a bomb. And Iran was doing that at very dangerous levels, and that's why they were bombed. But the enriched uranium has been removed. Really? President Trump said today, we saw some vehicles and carts outside of the reactor that just had to do with construction, had nothing to do with removing uranium. Secondly, I don't know, call me crazy. Don't you think if Iran at their main nuclear sites was removing uranium and transporting it somewhere, that Israel would have probably noticed? Because Israel has assets, literally, clearly Mossad assets, intelligence assets throughout that country, deeply, deeply ingrained and infiltrating the regime on every level. So call me crazy. I think Israel probably would have noticed. They seem to notice everything else about Iran's nuclear program. Then you have U.S. satellite imagery. So come on. But this is the media's new game. What a twisted bunch. But you can't believe a word that comes out of their mouths, the likes of CNN. It's Trump derangement syndrome, TDS, and it's Israel derangement syndrome, IDS. And they rush to embrace America's enemies. Again, just Bible times, though. The prophet Isaiah discussed it where good is evil and evil is good, right? At least according to the left. But Khamenei is talking about the U.S. paying a heavy price. Israel would have been destroyed if the U.S. didn't intervene. He's congratulating the great Iranian nation. You get it. You get the picture. But we know what happened. Anyone with a shred of common sense, in times where common sense is not so common. But we have a very educated, common sense audience here on The Watchman. So I get an inkling that you're listening to the words of Khamenei and laughing, as I hope much of the world is. But folks, I told you as we close here, evil is relentless. He's not going to stop. They're not going to stop. Evil like that, which is demonically driven, it must be crushed decisively. Don't give it room to breathe. And even Hamas is still up to their games. They've been smashed, and they're still playing games and trying to cause trouble because this is who they are. You take the guns and bombs away, who are they? They exist for this, to cause mayhem. This is why they exist. So they're not going to stop. Evil is relentless. It's arrogant. It's also quite stupid, thank God, as we saw Iran's decisions or lack thereof over the last 2 weeks. So be encouraged. Take heart. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, now more than ever. God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.